Good evening, Pamela. How are you tonight? You look.
Fine.
I like your hair like that.
Thank you. It's my new
My
haircut.
hair too.
Good evening, Vinny. How are you?
I am great. I'm great. I'm very in an up mood today. I'm in a great mood. I don't know why. We're talking about crime and we're talking about disorder, but we have a great guest today, Sam Turvey from the Rethink Penn Station. Um, we're going to talk about what's going on with this eminent domain and how Michael Spain, how are you? From South Carolina. Oh boy, we're all over.
Wow.
I met him at the South Carolina. I gave a lecture at the South Carolina Private Eyes Association about 8 years ago, and he was my host. Very nice people, very nice people. Um, okay, so we keep talking about the same thing over and over again, but it's not getting resolved. Uh, the mayor of New York it's his third week, and the crime
Yes.
has gone up, not down. So he's not being effective. But we got to give the guy a chance. Okay, we have to give him a chance.
Right. But you got to understand, Vinny, nothing's going to happen overnight.
No,
This pattern of crime has been building for more than the time period of the pandemic. It's been building from the whole time that we've had De Blasio as the mayor. So you really can't expect, Mayor Adams to come and swoop in
no,
and
you're
everything's
right.
going to change
But
overnight.
he is putting anti-crime, anti-gun. He's doing that. Eddie Gazzetti. All right, we got Eddie Gazzetti on board here.
Yeah, but look what's
I
happening.
salute.
Right, yeah, I have my seltzer. I didn't even get a chance to pop up my bottle of wine yet. But what's happening is what Adams is doing, which is really good, which is something that De Blasio did not do, is the fact that the cops now in their sectors are now patrolling the subway system underneath their areas for patrol, which is something that was not being done under the De Blasio.
That's a good
That's
sign,
the,
but
it's
there's
a good
still
sign.
people getting shoved under the train, like that happened last week. A Chinese girl.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Now it's
And
not
yet,
only in New York.
Vinny, you got to understand something. No matter how many police officers you have patrolling, all you need to do is have the police officers turn the corner, and next thing you know, you got a crime being committed.
Okay, I was in Grand Central the other day, and I'm in Grand Central, which is not a high crime area. It's very low, and there's 6 or 7 cops hanging out and just talking.
With
I
each
feel like
other
come. I feel like going. How come you guys aren't patrolling the area?
because
You,
they're afraid to separate from each other. That's why they're all huddling together.
yeah, but I mean, it's
I mean,
all
all
about
kidding aside, right? All
one of the
kidding
things.
aside,
Maybe
they should
because
be down there doing their patrols and not
yeah.
sitting there texting or joking around with each other. They're down there, do your job.
Okay, one of the things that bothers me about law enforcement in some respects is the distribution of people. Hi, Mark. Hi, Mike. All the
Hi.
distribution of people that yeah. How do you help the homeless? How do you help the homeless? You put them in a. I hate to say it. You can't put them in jail. You got to put them in an
You put them in
institution.
jail. Being
You got to put
homeless
them
is
in an
not a
institution.
crime.
No, but when they commit a crime, you got to put them in jail. But then when the
Yes,
jail
but being
can't
homeless
handle
by
them,
virtue,
the
but
jail can't handle them. You got to put them in
By
a mental institution.
being homeless is not a crime. When you commit a crime, that's something else. Then you got to be penalized. However, under our new New York County District Attorney Bragg, no matter what crime is going to be committed in Manhattan right now, he doesn't want to prosecute
I
anyone.
knew you were going to bring that up, and
You did.
I knew you were going to bring it
You
up.
felt it.
Good, keep going with it. Let's keep. Oh, by the way,
He's hammering away. DA Bragg needs to either be taken out of office or someone's got to sit down and tell him, listen, you're elected top cop, New York County. You got to do something because right now all the other district attorneys in all the other counties are not happy with him, and Eric Adams is not happy with him.
no.
So
And by the way, his
unless
own
Bragg
staff
is
isn't
just out
happy
on his
with him.
own.
He had about 8 or 9 top-notch prosecutors leave the office.
Yes.
They're leaving. They don't want. Hey, they don't want anything to do with him. Now, guess what? He did a Kamala Harris. He hired a PR firm to improve his image. The only way his image is going to be improved if he
Is prosecute
prosecutes and does
cases.
his job.
Prosecute cases, your image will be improved.
Now, I have an analogy. I'm driving down a road every week. And every time I drive down this road, there's potholes on the road and my tires break and I have to get a new tire. And this happened to me 4 or 5 times. Then I said to myself, wait a minute. If this is happening 4 or 5 times, maybe I shouldn't drive on that road. The same thing with these homeless people. They're committing crimes because they're mentally challenged. You have to address like that Michael Span said. You got to address the homeless situation. De Blasio's wife spent $1 billion on this drive and didn't do shit. I did a little research. They had some shelters, except Joe Tessie
Hey,
put
wait a second. What
everybody in
about
jail
me?
except you and me.
Joe, what about me? You're gonna put everyone in jail except you and Vinny? You leaving me out there?
You gotta know Joe Tessie. You gotta know him. He's a character. But then again, so they don't. The problem is they have not addressed it properly. They put them in hotels. Guess what? They destroyed the rooms they're in.
Yeah.
In San Francisco, they put them in a very good hotel that I stayed at, the Cliff Hotel in San Francisco, an excellent hotel. They put them in this luxury 4-star hotel. The staff was afraid to go in the room. They were shooting drugs, getting high, getting drunk, having orgies, shitting all over literally shitting all over the place. The place was
like,
just.
Wait a second. That sounds like a rock star weekend. What are you talking about?
Well,
Trash in the rooms, shit all over.
well,
the
you have the Penn. When Sam gets on, you have the Pennsylvania Hotel, which is kind of old and they should put the homeless in there, but they should have a better system than just putting them in a room. They need supervision. They need guidance. They don't have any guidance. They just.
What kind of guidance is that? If you remember, this was all done many years ago under Norman Siegel with the New York Civil Liberties Union.
Right.
Because I interned for Norman. I love Norman Siegel dearly.
Very sharp guy, very bright guy.
I love that man. I love that guy. I had interned for Norman when I was in my second or third year of law school. And we had the homeless situation back then, and it's been no different from then until now. And if you remember back then, he had this African-American woman, Billy Boggs. She became like the poster child for Norman Siegel. Right. And everybody was like, I'm trying to remember. I think it was Giuliani at the time who may have been the mayor, because I know I was around my end of my law school days. I think he was around. I think it was him. No, it was Dinkins. I think Dinkins was the mayor. Well, whomever. But the bottom line is this: the homeless situation was horrible. You had the squeegee men all over the place. You had more urine and people defecating all over the streets. It was disgusting, and there was nothing being done about it. So now let's get the homeless off the streets. So what ends up happening was this one woman, Billy Boggs, African-American woman, she became the poster child, like I said, for not wanting to go into these homeless shelters. Because what she said was they are more dangerous. These homeless shelters are more dangerous than being on the street. Because in the homeless shelters, and I know clients, unfortunately, who come out of jail and they end up in homeless shelters. And what they said is that all their belongings are stolen. Whether they got the government flip phone or what other type of phone, their belongings are stolen. If the belongings are not stolen, they're getting raped and robbed and stabbed in their sleep, and they're getting harassed. And the staff is not doing anything about it because half the time the staff is on drugs too. The place is run rampant with drugs. So they want to be on the street because they feel safer. Now, you talk about the fact that they have mental illness. You have mental illness issues. These people are supposed to be taking their medication. Who's staying on top of them to make sure they take their medication?
Nobody.
Exactly. So
now I work for
take your meds. They're not going to take them.
Keep in mind, when I was on the job, I worked for the OPD, Office of Professional Discipline, and I worked for the medical board. And I with the medical board was transferred to the health department. Okay, so Governor Carey was my boss at the time. He decided to take everybody out of mental institutions and put them on the street because we couldn't afford it. Meanwhile, we can't afford what's going on now. So what happened was, at that time, I said, you know what? We're going to have a major problem with these homeless people. And I guess I'm clairvoyant or something. It happens now. Now, what what is it costing us? What is it costing us in the respect of crime, robberies, incarcerate? Because when they commit a crime, they still have to be arrested. Okay,
Okay.
if you had them in a proper mental institution, then it would probably cost the cost would be not eliminated, but it would be even to what is costing us now.
How do you figure
And
that?
okay, if, I don't have the exact figures, but if you keep somebody in a mental institution in a ward with supervision, they get fed. They have occupational therapy. They have whatever therapy they can have for them. They don't get that on the street. But when they commit a crime, it costs the city and the state money to prosecute, the police, the whole bit. It's just uh, uh, um, maybe I'm not making myself clear. What I'm saying is it would be an even Steven. If you take care of these people one way, you're not going to cost you a different way. Not going to cost you
But
in
not every person who has mental illness commits a crime, and not every person who commits a crime has mental illness.
right. But a
So
person that has
you
mental
can't.
illness should be in a mental hospital being treated properly,
All right,
either
but not forever.
inpatient or even outpatient, but should be treated. Now, when I worked for the medical board, we had doctors under Article Public Health Law 195, if I'm correct, counselor. If they were a danger to the public or to their patients, we would try to take them out, which is very hard, even under that law, especially with a physician. But we got doctors committed because they were hurting people. But why don't you do that with these people? Commit them and get them because if you put them in a shelter, first of all, one of the girls that worked for me had to go undercover in a shelter. She told me it was the worst experience in her life. She fell asleep. They took her shoes. Okay, you're in a big room with a whole bunch of people, and then no supervision. What they do, they hire the minimum wage people to be security. They hire people that are probably have the same problems that they're trying to supervise.
Sure.
They don't hire good quality people. Now, for a while, my daughter and I, in our company, we were doing 18B work, but only for women that were looking for their husbands and baby daddies and all that kind of stuff. And we had to go to these shelters to find these people.
Right.
What a disgrace! It's disgusting.
You go in
People are
these
shooting
shelters.
up outside. They're shooting up outside the shelter. They're shooting up probably inside the shelter too. They don't give a shit. And the counselors they have, they're all arrogant. They really don't like their job, which I can't. In a way, I can't blame them.
Well, I mean,
But
it's not. You're not working in a florist where it's a happy occasion.
no,
You're
it's not a
working. You're
happy
working.
occasion.
Okay.
You
You're
have a
working.
unique way of putting things, Pamela. You sound like an
Thank you.
attorney. You sound like a lawyer. Did you do that in your trials? Did you bring up these flowery statements?
Yes. 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 I actually do.
Okay. So
But here's the thing. But again, you have somebody who comes out of a let's say an outpatient program. Okay, they were treated. They come out of an outpatient program. They have a prescription. Go take your meds. Now, a couple things happen. If they're on the street and if they lose their paperwork and they lose their prescription, how are they going to go and refill their meds, for instance? Or, on the other hand, if they're robbed and they lose all their crap because they're being robbed of whatever belongs they have in their push carts and everything else, they're not going to go and get their prescriptions refilled. If they are homeless, okay,
well, time out, time
majority of
out.
the time,
They get their prescription filled in the center, in the facility that they're being housed in,
right? But
or
once they walk out,
or another facility that's affiliated with it, so they can get
but right,
treatment.
but Vinny, they're not prisoners. Okay, they're in an outpatient facility, so it's on them to have to continue to go, whether it's
Correct.
daily or weekly. Okay, they're not incarcerated. It's not like that they're on probation. They have to check in, and if they don't, they're going to violate, and they're going to warrant and be arrested. So they're really, it's on their own so-called recognizance for them to have to go and check in and go for their therapy. If there's something wrong with them because they have mental illness, or they're hearing more voices than you and I normally hear, okay, they're not going to remember that they have to go and take the prescriptions.
Right.
They're not
So
going to want to take them.
how do
They're
we
going to
address
fail to take them.
how do we fix that?
I'm not really sure. Or they also sell whatever medication they're on to get money on the street.
Well, only if the medication is a Schedule 3 medication. If it's not a narcotic, they're not going to sell it. So they're not getting narcotics. They're not getting a mind altering drug. They're getting drugs to help their situation.
True.
This so
But
they're not going to.
you can't. Okay, you
The only thing they
cannot
can sell
permanently.
if they're on methadone, they could sell methadone because methadone you get high off methadone.
Right, methadone.
But they're not on
If
methadone. They're on, Halodan. They're on a different psychotic, a non-psychotic drug. So they're not selling their meds. But you're right.
but there's nothing to force them to continue. Listen, I know, for instance, I barely take my vitamins. I'm supposed to take them every single day. When I had COVID, I was supposed to take my medication every single day. I did and I didn't. Only for the fact I personally don't like taking medication. That's
No,
just
nobody
my own
does.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes people do. They get addicted
Well,
to it. I don't have it. I don't have it.
if it gets you high, yes,
Yeah, well, I just don't have an addictive personality, except when it comes to stilettos and shopping. It's different, But for
But by the way,
part,
you mentioned
but you cannot institutionalize people forever.
No, I
Okay,
understand, but they got to be
that's
treated.
punitive. It's
Well,
punitive. You can't, just because someone has a mental disorder, you don't just lock them away forever. That's what they
not
did to
forever,
people
but
in
you
the
gotta put them in
1800s.
a situation where they can be treated. It's not,
Okay. And who's paying for the treatment
I've
in
seen
Canada? It's
people that
through one
had.
state.
Listen, there are people that have mental difficulties, but under the proper treatment, they can deal with it. They can live an active, normal life. I have somebody in my family like that, and we had a lot of problems with a family member, and he's on medication. And we never had any in 10 years. We haven't had a problem with him. Okay, because he's being treated properly, and he's
The
not in an
problem,
institution.
right? Here's what the situation is right now. And this happened to Khalif Browder and a couple of other inmates who committed suicide in Rikers Island. You take somebody who is incarcerated awaiting trial, or you take someone who's incarcerated who already pled guilty or found guilty at trial. You now have him locked away for whatever period of time that he's supposed to be facing. Majority of these institutions, correctional institutions, do not have the proper training on how to deal with inmates who have mental disorders. So now they're just locked away. They may be committing more crimes, either against other inmates or correction officers, or committing suicide while they're incarcerated. That there has to be training coming from all the way down. You're talking about from in the state, from in the correctional facilities, on how to treat inmates who have mental disorders, which they don't treat them. They're not trained for it. Then you have other institutions as well, where you have to learn how to treat people who have mental disorders. You cannot just
Okay, but
lock
don't
them
they have
away. You
social
can't
workers
just
in
give
jail?
them.
Don't they have social workers in jail? Don't they have people that are supposed to be there to help them?
They have, right, but I also think they're
You
short
can't
staffed.
rely on
They're
correction
short staffed.
officers. You cannot rely on correction officers to do that. And I'll tell you why. Um, in law enforcement, when you get a bunch of cops and people in law enforcement together, and you talk about the hierarchy of 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 law enforcement, correction officers are somewhere down below, next to a forest ranger. You know what I'm saying? A park ranger. And I don't mean to be this, because there are some really good correction officers,
No,
but
no, we're not.
it,
I'm not being.
it
We're not being disparaging to
no,
anybody.
but I'm
It's a
being
job.
honest, because
Right.
in law enforcement, you come across with these people. You come across these people, and
But the
you
problem
know
is that
they're limited. They have limit. Everybody has limitations. Some people have
no,
more
there has to be
limitations than
training.
others.
Okay, here's the situation. There are far too many police officers who have taken down and unfortunately killed people in the line of duty because they could not recognize the fact that these people had mental disturbances, mental illness. Okay, so if someone's coming at you, and of course you're going to use a taser or shoot but a lot of times these people are actually shot and killed, and you find out afterwards the man was so mentally disturbed and deranged and had such a mental illness because he didn't take his medication. He didn't hear you. He didn't understand what was being said. He couldn't speak. He was a mute. He's coming at you. You know, you can't just turn around and start shooting and killing the
No,
person.
you don't shoot. You taser him. You taser
Right.
him.
But more than likely,
Now,
if you look at what
the
happened over
problem
the
the
last
problem
couple
with
of years,
police officers have is a lot of them are scared. They're afraid. They're afraid. What am I going to do if I use excessive force? I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to lose my job. I might get arrested.
no,
What
but we're not
they
even but not even
now,
talking
wait.
about
The
the fact.
problem is that they're not social workers. Now, one of the um, ideas was, and in some of the states where they defund the police, is to have social workers respond to incidents like that, like you just talked about, which I think is a good idea, except you're going to
They're not
find a
all.
lot of social workers are going to get harmed because they can't. You can't if you can't deal with someone's mental problem on the spot. First of all, in therapy, it takes it takes a while to get somebody in therapy. If a man has got a domestic dispute and he's got a knife to his wife's throat, or the wife got a knife to her husband's throat, which happens sometimes.
Right. A
What
social
is the
worker
social
coming in
worker? How
calling
the
nothing,
social worker is going to
nothing.
try to talk to them? But there
It's not going
comes
to
a
work.
point when with good intentions, that he might harm that person, and you have to make a life and death situation.
Okay. What
Right?
I
For
think is
example,
better.
for
Right.
example, the guy in the Jewish, you're Jewish, right? I'm Jewish by injection, but that's besides the point.
I'm Italian by injection.
Yeah, hey,
Bada bing, bada boom. Okay.
we got a great person. We got a great thing going on here. Okay, so the SWAT team got there, the FBI team got there. They're very well trained. And they had a standoff for I don't know how many hours. And they got to the point when they knew that they just said, we got to take the guy out. I was going to kill the people.
Wait,
Now,
are you talking about wait a second, are you talking about what happened the other day with the synagogue with the rabbi
yeah,
and
the
the
synagogue, the rabbi, yeah.
oh,
And the rabbi was very good. He talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. But the bottom line is this guy was going to kill somebody, and they had to take him out. A social worker can't do that. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to see. Now, I would like a social worker with a cop
yes, I was going
handling
to
a situation.
suggest
That
that.
would be an ideal
Right.
situation.
As a
The only
team.
thing is, I don't think we could afford that. That would be a great idea to send a social worker with a cop. Let the social worker do their thing, and at some point, if the person looks like they're going to kill somebody, then the police officer. Now, let me tell you something.
Okay, so
If a
how long is
police
it
officer does not act, if that person kills a hostage and the police officer doesn't do anything, he gets in trouble for dereliction of duty. He's getting in trouble for not doing his job. It's a catch-22. And we have some
I don't
cops
believe
listening on. I want their opinion too.
I don't believe a
Mike
social worker
Spano and
is
Mike.
the
Yeah,
Cindy was going to say, I don't believe a social worker showing up to do the job of a police officer is the answer.
drug addiction is a mental issue. That's true. Yeah, yeah. Drug
Well,
addiction is
so,
a mental. So is
right, so is
alcoholism.
alcohol.
Anything
So
that
is
makes you
alcohol.
do what you're not supposed to do is some sort of mental. You know.
Well, anytime you do it, you're using drugs or alcohol, and as a dependency, then there is a mental element to it. There's a mental illness
Well, I'm having a
factor to
glass
it.
of wine. Do I have a mental illness?
Yes, you do because you're not sharing with me.
I'll email you a glass of wine,
Thank you. It's virtual.
a virtual toast.
You're gonna make me get up and go get my wine right now off
Okay,
camera.
let's bring our guest on because we're having a
Yes.
lot of fun. But I want Mr. Turvey to be Sam Turvey, and okay, Sam, you heard our dialogue here. You see, we're in a good mood, and you're going to be in a good mood, telling us what's ailing you.
Well, first of all, if
uh,
I may I just interject for a second, Sam? Being that nobody who's watching or listening to us right now knows what it is that you do, I'd like to say this is Sam Turvey from Rethink New York City. Please tell us, what is Rethink New York City?
Yeah, Rethink New York City is the advocacy arm of a studio called Rethink NYC, and we look at infrastructure problems, urban governance problems, and their overall economic impact, and we make recommendations for how we think the city can operate better. And I've been asked to speak tonight about the governor's proposed Penn Station plan, which would radically alter the landscape around Penn Station and Madison Square Garden to the great detriment of a lot of the people and businesses that are there. And I want to be able to talk to you about what we think could be done and why it could be done better. But Pam or Pamela, please tell me which you prefer.
Pam.
If there's
Sam
any
and
other
Pam,
setup
all
you
right?
need, if there's any other information you need, I'm happy to give it to you.
Yeah, Sam and Pam. Because I know if you're familiar with when Barclays Center was a big point of controversy for a while there, because they did the same thing with eminent domain. They took all these small homes and small buildings and businesses, and they basically, caused everybody to sell and evacuate that whole area. Otherwise, they increased the rent so much because they took over all that land in order to build the Barclays Center. And a lot of people had been protesting for what they did to the area. They totally changed the whole face of that whole downtown
Let me interrupt.
Flatbush Avenue
You know who
area.
made all the money on that? Reverend Al. Reverend Al
No idea.
Sharpton made a ton of money with that.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know. I know.
You know.
Well, I don't think Reverend Al will make any money on the Penn Station deal.
No,
But
no.
Pam, is similar to what you're saying. For a long time, many people have suggested that the current Penn Station being underground and under Madison Square Garden is inadequate for its purposes. It frankly should be more of a train station like it once was, which was a train station which was bigger and the pier of Grand Central Station. And right now you had just pre-COVID 650,000 people going through there a day, projected to go up to 800,000 people a day. That's bigger than the population of Boston. And as any of you who have gone through there know, it's absolutely miserable and it's embarrassment to the city. So a lot of groups have talked about what to do for a number of years. One of them includes moving Madison Square Garden, which I know isn't popular with everybody, but we can talk about that in a minute. But the Governor Cuomo ultimately decided to favor one of the big real estate developers and landlords in the area of Ornado, and he came forward with an idea that we're going to tear down all the blocks surrounding the current Penn Station, Madison Square Garden, and we're going to tear all the buildings down and allow developers to build super talls, violate all the zoning variances, and build buildings as higher than the Empire State Building, literally a wall of buildings around that area. And that would help pay for a still underground train station that I frankly think would not be much better than what's going on there presently and would have all the charm of the Port Authority bus terminal, except it would be underground. But the bigger problem we have is, and this, I'm not as familiar with the Barclays situation as I should be, but the problem we have is you're talking about a lot of small businesses that are there, historic structures that are there, and residents are there. And in evaluating this, the state, their numbers seem to be funny. A lot of this seems to be funny. There are probably over 2,000 apartments in the area. We think that might translate to 5,000 or 6,000 people. Many of them are seniors. Many of them are in rent-stabilized apartments.
And where are they
You're
going
not
to
going
put
to
these people?
replace that affordable housing.
It's
And
a,
there's
it's a
some
right, low income, but those homes, those stores and those businesses have been around there for many, many years. Because I know of one particular one. There's a pizzeria. A friend of mine who's an attorney, his family owns that, and that's been there for easily 30 years, if not more. And it's like 2 stories above. You have like 2 or 3 apartments above, and then you have the pizzeria, and it's just like that in that whole area. It's residential and commercial property in that area, and then you're displacing thousands of people, and you're disrupting thousands of businesses that have been there for so many years. And that's what makes it so nice in that area. You come out, you have these small, like mom and pop type of stores. Now you're just going to get rid of everything just to put up these hideous high-rise buildings. That's really
Well, in the
what it
high-rise
is.
buildings, the super
Change
talls
the-
and other parts of the city, the
Yeah.
people who live in them already hate them, and as a result, are beginning to hate each other. And who hate them? They destroyed the skyline of Central Park South. It's a shame Jackie Kennedy wasn't alive or Jackie Onassis wasn't alive to protest those. And I wish I had her stature and could try to do better at fighting this, but I'm going to give it all I have, and the people I'm working with are going to give it all we have. But Pam, you point out something really, really, really important. This is one of the last truly multi-use districts in Manhattan, and there are a tremendous number of small businesses, probably 1,300 or so, and they run the variety. One of our advocates is a guy named Gene Sinigliano. He runs a business doing high-end tube amplifiers for some of the great guitarists around. And that 30th Street block,
Yeah, that's
31st Street, they're going to tear
right.
down. This is where Steve Marshall lives.
Steve Miller. Steve told
Yeah,
me about that. Yeah.
Steve Marshall has
The
done great
Marshall. Yeah.
things with music. There's a lot of musical history there. Harry Belafonte lived in a loft there. Bette Midler probably still has her business there. Steve will tell you how Tommy Ramone used to live downstairs. And folks like that are still coming in and out of there. And that's what makes the city great. And people really need to remember that, because if you go from Hudson Yards and put another Hudson Yards surrounding Madison Square Garden, Penn Station, and that'll be the beginning of there'll be even more.
Sam,
And
let me interrupt you.
go ahead.
You mentioned the Hudson Yards. Now, I heard something that they're not doing well with Hudson Yards. Is that true? That there's a lot of people are not happy, that the apartments are not good. There's a lot of problems with that. You probably know more about it than I do.
I don't know as much about the apartments as I might. I do know they're having trouble keeping big retail tenants and filling the space. In fairness to them, they were opening right into the COVID pandemic. But I don't think anybody predicts that we have the need for this high-end commercial real estate that has become the crack cocaine of how we fund infrastructure in the city. So Hudson Yards helped pay for the 7 train. This is supposed to help pay for a better Penn Station, although it's going to still be very mediocre. We're going to do a super toll at the Port Authority to help pay for a new bus terminal, even though it's insane to bring buses through the Lincoln Tunnel. They should figure out a rail link. And we're going to put another big high-rise next to Grand Central so that none of us can see the Chrysler Building anymore. Do we want to be New York City or do we want to be Dubai? And
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think we need to be
Eric
Dubai.
Adams been involved in any of these discussions at all?
We're just beginning to reach out to his
William
office.
Otteson says we do not need more office space. Commutes are now working from home. He's right. We have a lot of office space in Manhattan that's empty.
You go
Matter of fact,
downtown.
what they're
Exactly.
doing
You go
is they're
downtown,
renovating them and making apartments out of them. You could always make an apartment out of a building, but the offices, a lot of people aren't even coming back to work.
Well, and I, on the one hand, we don't want to over rely on that, and that will change at some point. But I do think there's been a permanent shift. There's no question to me there's been a permanent shift, and they are still living on algorithms from pre-COVID, and they're just wrong. And I think the Governor Hochul scaled back Governor Cuomo's plan. It took a little density out of it. She probably could take even more out of it because the market is not going to support what they're trying to do.
No, I'm a businessman. I can't see. I know that I read that the market they were giving away office space.
Yes,
I get emails from these real estate people. We got the office space, 5,000 square feet, a pre-pandemic rates from $50 a square foot to $30. I mean, it's ridiculous. Now, where are they going to get people to come and rent all these office space? I don't see that. I don't see it.
I don't look. I don't see it either. But New York was and is very popular, and New York is not going to die. It will
No, but
reinvent
if
itself.
it's not gonna die yet,
Yeah.
unless you get the homeless and you get the crime off the street. People. I see articles all the time of people are afraid to come into New York City. People are
Well,
afraid to take the train.
I think that part of the solution is reinventing the city and our name Rethink New York. So
I hope you're Sam. I think I agree with you 100%. I think but who's going to reinvent it? Now, I have a lot of faith in the new mayor. I really I met him a few times. I think he's a very bright guy. I don't know. I just support him in the way I can. I just hope he does. But the problem is, you have a um, city council that's very left wing, defund the police. I mean, these are all people that live in good neighborhoods and have security. They don't deal with the people that are causing the crime. They don't take the train. They
Well,
don't take. You know they
our proposals, which include a transit component, are supported by people on the far left and people on the far right and people right in the middle. So I'm very proud of that and happy about that. And so we don't, we don't suffer from that. One thing we do think, and I do want to get this concept across because it's important to 31st Street. We think that if you converted the station operations to through running, which you're very used to, it's what the subways do. But instead of the trains coming in from New Jersey and going back empty and clogging up the tunnels so that the commuters come in miserable and angry and
right.
and a lot of waste of time, have the trains run through to someplace like Sunnyside and then continue on up through to Port Morris in the Bronx, the same way the D train that you and I both know and love comes down from the Bronx, comes through Midtown and heads all the way. Where does it go out to Coney Island? It goes out so somewhere way
No,
out there.
The A train does it. The A train is the
that.
longest train in New York City.
Yeah, and
I lived in Howard Beach.
But
and,
if we did that with
that
a
train,
train,
yeah, that's a smart thing. That train goes from Far Rockaway into Queens, into Brooklyn, all the way down, and then comes up Manhattan, and then goes back to the Bronx.
Yeah. Well, we think you could do that with the commuter lines. The governor's proposed something that's sort of
That's
like
a smart idea.
Brooklyn Queens joint, and then all of a sudden you don't have as much pressure on real estate in Manhattan, and you have the ability to leave 31st Street alone. You don't have to demolish it. We could do this operating model within the existing envelope of Penn Station and not tear 31st Street down at all, which we should not. There's a lot of Class B and Class C office space there
Yes.
for those small businesses that Pam was talking about. And we need those. That's the kind of city we want. We want a vibrant city. Why do we want a vibrant city? Why does Hollywood come here? They like our New York City fabric. They like our buildings. The Sky Bridge that's over 32nd Street, they have, I don't know why they did it computer generated, but it's in the new West Side Story. It's there. Steve Spielberg wants that there. When people come and film in New York, they're not filming at Hudson Yards. They're filming in the Gotham pre-war city mostly.
Right, but Sam, what I love about New York, and I've lived in other parts of the country when I've gone to school and everything else, and the one thing I love about New York is the fact that we actually have neighborhoods. You can go from one neighborhood to the next.
Right.
And
Yes.
the character and the quality of the people, the stores, the food, the culture is represented in those little neighborhoods. Once you turn around and you take that out and you just basically turn everything into just like a mega mall of everything of all just absolute sameness, you lose what New York is all about. And New York has always been about the neighborhoods and the small mom and pop shops and like areas like
before you came on, Sam and I had a discussion about that. He lived in the Bronx and he went to school in the Bronx, my neighborhood, Arthur Avenue, the Bronx Tale. Now, I didn't tell you this, but I am part of a movie that's going to be filming in April, and it's going to be a revision in a way of the Bronx Tale. And they purposely asked me to get people from the Bronx Tale into this movie. And it's a British company, so they really, they thought of Bronx Tale. They really don't know all this. But what you said is true. Arthur Avenue, the Bronx, there's all these small stores that they're all doing very well, by the way. You go there on a Saturday or Sunday, the stores are packed. The restaurants are packed because people like the neighborhood. They like going to the neighborhood. They might not live there, but they want to visit there. And, that is like you said, Pam, that's, people like that. It's not a mega building. Skyscrapers are beautiful. I love them, but they don't have any character. There's no personality to it.
There's no flavor to it. It's just a skyscraper. But for instance,
skyscraper is they're beautiful, but then what? But then what?
But then they look the same like
everything else. We also say, look, we're not saying no new construction. You can have new construction in certain places. There are a couple of post-war one-story buildings with chains in them. Knock yourself out, or certain other buildings you can do this too. But not the Church of St. John's the Baptist, which is 150
Now, I want to
years
ask you
old.
something. Is the archdiocese, or well, that's not a Catholic church. That's a Christian
No, it is
church.
a Catholic church.
Oh, it is. Have the archdiocese have something? I mean, they're very
The,
powerful.
the upper levels of the Catholic Church have been surprisingly quiet, and I'm a Fordham guy, so I'm
Oh,
I'm
you
still
with the
Catholic.
Jesuits.
But we believe at the parish level they are not very happy at all about what might be happening. And then when you talk about the homeless, the various churches in that area that provide a lot of great services for the homeless. I mean, I think things have gotten really
Well,
out of hand
Sam, I didn't tell you
recently.
this, but I had an office for 5 years at 110 West 31st Street, 31st Street and 6th Avenue. And right next to it is the church there, St. Francis, I think.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're right.
And they take care of the homeless people. You see, early in the morning, they're getting their breakfast or their whatever, and they try to help them, William Otteson says, build a magnificent new above ground Penn Station. That's a lofty idea, William. I don't know
Well,
if that,
let me, I know William, and I'm glad he keeps reminding me of things I should be talking about. But one of the things that brought me to this was an article that said, "Hey, look, the foundation for the original Penn Station is still there. It was a wonderful train station, one of the greatest architectural pieces in the world. Can we rebuild it?" Now, I'm sure most of you think, "What a crazy thought." First, we have to talk about where could Madison Square Garden go and how, or Two Penn Plaza go and how. But should we have a great above ground station there? And I would say having 650 or projected to 800,000 people going through there, the city should have a great gateway, a great entryway there. And 65 to 70% of New York City people we polled it agree on that. Now, as to the Madison Square Garden issue, which I know gets some people excited, let me just, make a full disclosure. I was a Knicks season ticket holder for 31 years, so I've had a lot of pain and some joy in that building, going back to my even before the Knicks, my Fordham Manhattan game years. But that's the fourth Madison Square Garden. I also was at the Madison Square Garden on 8th Avenue in
me
the
too.
50s.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people, if you're my vintage, went to the circus there, and
Yes.
I went to other things there. And some people say, well, the history. Marilyn Monroe sang "Happy Birthday" to President Kennedy. She didn't sing it at the present garden. She sang it at the one that was on 8th Avenue. We think you could find it good. First of all, the Madison Square Garden is the oldest arena in the NBA. It's probably about the same vintage as Shea Stadium. And, ballparks are rebuilt and they're refashioned many times. And we think it's time to build a great Madison Square Garden in Manhattan. The real excitement of Madison Square Garden, I believe, is that it's in Manhattan. It's not the same garden we grew up with. They retooled the entire inside, and the court that they won the championships on. I have a piece of it at home. So we think we need to find a good solution for Madison Square Garden. We've projected a few different sites, including the Hudson Yards site that I talked to you about, which, think about it, that picture behind you, Vinny, if Madison Square Garden were on 12th Avenue there, and you're at a playoff game, if the Knicks continue to make the playoffs as they did last year for the first time in a long, long time,
Yeah.
you could be having a beer looking at a sunset over the Hudson River. There's a lot of greatness that happens.
They wanted to build a stadium.
Right.
Sam, excuse me. They wanted to build a stadium for the Jets there in the Hudson.
Yeah, I also was a Jets season ticket holder for a long time, so we really have quite the franchises in New York, don't we? But
Yeah.
the first professional football game I ever saw was Joe Namath win the Super Bowl, and so it's hard not to
That
be
was
addicted to it.
1969.
Yeah. So
Well, people around the country love to hate New York. They love to hate us because we are the top city in the world for a lot of reasons, and we should keep that going. But what's going on now with the crime and all the crazy stuff that's going on, people are shying away from New York.
Well, look, Vinny, as part of our proposal, we have suggested things like the Penn Power Station, and I'm not saying this has to happen, but this is the way we think and rethink.
Right.
That's not being used for anything right now. You could probably find a way to put a first-in-class homeless servicer provider in that building. Try to have a place where people could begin to be referred out to the right services. Maybe you have some semi-private beds there, a shower, somebody like the Manhattan Bowery Corporation or the Urban Resources Institute. Get somebody who knows what they're doing in there. If you have to deal, the mentally ill, there are different levels of the population, the mentally ill, chemically addicted, and then there are plenty of people who are just plain down and out. And, if you're going to try to figure out ways to deal with that population, some of it will be law enforcement, some of it will be social work, but then some of it you need facilities that you can help people. And some of the shelters have been a disgrace, not typically the ones run by some of these first-in-class social service providers. And I say this with some knowledge, as I worked in a mental institution for 2 years in college in, of all things, Vinny, occupational therapy.
Yeah. Your idea is great. Your idea is great. If they could put, you see, the problem with handling the homeless people, we rely on the government. As you know, the government is run by bureaucrats, and bureaucrats, they don't know what they're doing. The bosses in the government, I worked in the government, and I know what happened. The bosses don't know shit. It's the middle management that takes care of everything. You know that. The bosses don't know anything. They just get promoted. They get the political patronage, whatever the case may be. It's the middle people. You got to get to them to do the right thing. And what I've noticed and is that the government is just a bureaucracy. They just want to make money. They want to get their pensions. Some of them don't give a damn. I did a project with the city a few years ago with the HPD. And I'm in the offices there, and I'm saying these people don't give a damn. They don't care. They just want their paycheck.
Well, some of that I can't tell you that I can't tell you I disagree. That I would say, going to Fordham, there was a woman up there, a tenant organizer named Ann Devaney in the Bronx, and she used to say, "You get the government you deserve." It's hard in a place as big and complicated in New York, but part of why we are out fighting this fight, and look, the odds are very long. But we are not giving up, and we're not going to let these people just barrel us over with their bureaucratic intransigence, or the middle managers don't want to pivot because we got so invested in this under Cuomo. We don't want to turn around and start over again. And we're like, hey, you had a lousy idea. It's time to mix it. But we've got to push. Everybody's got to push. You get the guy. I mean, I know that sounds like a platitude, but you get the.
Let me ask you something, Sam. Kathy Hochul is promoted, is helping, because the $500,000 donation to Cuomo actually gets to her. However, I don't want to disparage her in any way, but the money went to them. Okay. Now, if she loses the election, and there's a good chance she might lose, what happens to this project? Now, the point I'm trying to make is,
if she lost to a contender that's more open to our view, and I haven't given up on changing her mind. She had to make a decision quick. I don't like the decision she made, and it was an easy decision because there's a lot of big money on that side of the table. But she said she's going to really listen to the community. And right now, the two community boards have voted against her proposal. The Landmarks Conservancy, the various coalitions, the various neighborhood and civic associations in our coalition, and even some of the elected officials that were getting a little weak-kneed are coming back to our style of thinking. So she's made the assembly. What about to hear from the community? We're going to keep screaming.
What about the people on the assembly in the city council? How many of them are on your side? How many are not?
The city council has been a little kneecapped because this is being handled through a special state provision. So we're more focused on state assemblymen and state senators. Brad Hoylman.
How are they handling it?
Kruger. I think they've been pretty good. I think when Hochul first came in, people want to be open to what she's doing. The jury's still out on where they all land, but we feel we've had decent support, at times considerable support from the local elected officials.
Good.
And we've just got to keep them honest. Look, she's in a little bit of a honeymoon period with New York, and I don't think anybody wants to get ugly early. But this is a really ugly project. I mean, Pam, apropos what you're saying, this will just chloroform entire neighborhoods or blocks in New York City and just kill vital New York City life. And we have to stop it, and we have to get that point across.
If I could just interject for a second, Sam, and tell me if I'm in the right neighborhood. I know somewhere down there in the 20s or 30s, as you're approaching that the area of Madison Square Garden, that whole area, isn't there there's blocks where they have like the plants and the trees that you can buy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think it is a good friend of mine's store, Remains Lighting, is on that block.
26th
That's
Street,
probably 29th between
26th Street
7th.
between 6th and 7th is all the flower,
Yeah.
Right,
big
because
flower.
that's what I, right, because that's what I was saying before. Is that there's certain areas I know on Sixth Avenue in the 30s where you have all the trimming stores. Because from many years ago, my family was in the garment industry,
Mhm.
and there were always different neighborhoods that you knew, like say Fashion area, Seventh Avenue, Sixth Avenue, Seventh Avenue. In the 30s, you had all of the textile industries
Yeah.
until that moved out of New York, and
Sixth
then you
Avenue
had the
has
button.
the
Right, you
notions and
had buttons
yeah.
and trims, and then when you went down into the 20s to the 30s area, then you have on the side street there around 6th Avenue, 7th Avenue, you have the wholesalers for the perfumes and the colognes, and then you have the plants and the live things.
Right. And
You
in
know,
29th
so
Street, you have the furriers.
right,
And
exactly.
yet,
That's
and
what I'm
yet,
saying. Like, so if you look to destroy all of these neighborhoods just to tear all of this down, look at all of the industries that are just in those specific block areas, block by block, that's going to be wiped out. Where are they supposed to go? Again, this is what's killing the small mom and pop stores. These stores and businesses have been there for a lot of them for generations. So if you're going to take all of that away just to rebuild a train station, I'm against it, because at the same time, listen, you have the trains. Is building this new train system, this new building, is that going to actually make the trains run on time?
well, we have a transit component that would help them run on time and help the whole region operate a lot better. And we think you can do that. They've confused it by, instead of this being a transit station plan, they've decided to make it a let's tear down the neighborhood plan and we'll think about the transit later. And that's one of the reasons they're going to run into problems in court, because everybody's saying, wait a minute, this isn't a transit plan. This is a real estate development plan. This makes no sense. You've got this thing very confused. Now, everybody thinks the only way you can pay for things in New York City is to sell air rights. That has to stop, because we're selling the heavens for like absolute mediocrity at ground level. And everybody swears, federal, state, and local, that we want small businesses, but exactly
We
what
want
you're
small
saying.
business. Yeah, we want small businesses just so we can displace them and
Yeah,
make it look
except
like, right. We're making it look like we're interested in the small businessman and woman, but technically you're not. If you could turn around and sell everybody out for this huge real estate deal, that's exactly what they're going to do. And then what do you say afterwards? Oh wow, I remember when that store was there. I remember when that restaurant was there. I wonder whatever happened to them. At the end of the day, nobody cares, because some fat cat is lining their pockets. But look what's happening now. Just to bump it up to another level, they keep talking about wanting to close down Rikers Island. They're not interested in the inmates. They're not interested in the penal penal system, the correctional facility. That's prime real estate. And I know for a fact, I spoke to somebody who saw the blueprints of what it is that they want to do with that prime real estate right there, right behind LaGuardia Airport. They want to turn that into a mega entertainment center with high-end hotels and a concert venue, because this way the entertainment can actually fly in on their small private airlines, come in and out of LaGuardia Airport.
Mm.
They go right over their little bridge right to Rikers, so-called Rikers Island, which is going to be some huge mega entertainment area. And again, they're moved. That's why they want to move everything into smaller jails, into other neighborhoods. They're not interested in taking care of the problems of what's going on at Rikers Island. They're looking at it only because this is a piece of real estate that we can all focus on and turn into something really big.
Well, our group has had some thoughts about Rikers that don't equate with that, and they're not for the purposes of this show. But I do agree they seem to be able to come up with really bad ideas for any number of these sites, including Governor's Island. And it's sad, because it's a great, wonderful, world-class city, and I wish we had some of the people who designed Rockefeller Center, or some of these other great things we have. Some people get mad at me, but I think Battery Park City is a net positive in that it's got big public space. It gives us access to the water. It has outdoor basketball courts. It has that great high school, Stuyvesant High School. It's got a museum of Jewish history. It's got an Irish famine memorial. it's not plugged into our street grid and it's a little isolated, but that couldn't be helped unless we eliminate the West Side Highway. Come on, let's look at that, and then look what they want to do at Penn Station. And you're like, really? And there are people who've been responsible for serious improvements in New York that are trying to tell us that this is world class. There's nothing world class about what they want to do at that location. It's an anti-urban juggernaut. It's embarrassing.
I agree with you, especially when you start taking away people's homes and businesses that they've built up for so many years. Where are those people supposed to go? If those are rent-controlled apartments, where else are they going to go to? It's very hard to find anything that's rent-controlled in New York. And you're taking away that flavor of all those stores and restaurants and businesses that are down there. It's part of the fabric of New York City.
We're hoping to track down Harry Belafonte and get him to be a spokesman first. But Winnie, you may or may not remember Gleason's Gym was on that block for a while.
Yeah. I box once in a while, and
Yeah.
I went there a few times when I was a kid, but that's gone now.
No,
Yeah.
Gleason's Gym is now downtown Brooklyn.
The only thing now I box is oranges, tomatoes. It's something I can box now.
I thought you were boxing windmills.
Well, yeah. Well,
I'm really hoping that this turns around.
William Otteson, I love this guy. He's got something to say about everything. You know him, Sam?
Yes, he's a 31st Street resident and a member of the Midtown South Community Council, and a really, really good guy.
Yeah, he sounds like it. He's a sharp guy, very sharp.
Yeah, but your buddy Steve is there's a healthy cast of characters on that block.
Oh yeah,
we hope.
Is that why they asked me to help? Because I'm a character myself.
Well, I said to Steve, "Who is this guy?" He says he's first rate. He's first rate.
Well, we got a couple minutes left. Anthony, you got to give us some publicity here for our businesses, my books and my. Okay, great. Okay, don't forget my last book, Rogue PI. And all right, that's a tough. You see that? I love Sam. I dress like that in Penn Station. Nobody bothers me.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will bother you any place in the world if you dress like that. But
no.
Yeah.
But I'm a pussycat. It is my daughter's company, and that's her phone number. Or you could call me. You have my number, and if we could help you in any way, we'll be doing it.
Well, I want to tell you, we really appreciate being on the show. And
now, I also want to. If you have any events going on, I'm applying for, and my New York City press credentials, so I have to videotape and present events for the police department. So I want to. Anything you have,
I will let you know. You're on our press list. Good. Tomorrow night, there's a hearing the state of New York is sponsoring. If you go on the Empire State Development Corp's website, you can see where the hearing is.
Well, the Zoom. I'm on the Zoom tomorrow.
5 o'clock. It's a Zoom call. It will be long, but feel free to stay on for as long as you want. And if you really feel like raising a little hell and speaking, there may be a lot of people ahead of you, but we would certainly appreciate it. And we are going to make sure the public is heard on this one. And apropos of some of the sentiments you're saying, we think this is for the heart and soul in New York, and it's time to tell them we don't need to be Houston, Shanghai, or Dubai. We are New York City.
Well, tell Bill Otteson. May I call you Bill, William? I'm there for you. If I can help you save your neighborhood, I'm there for you. Because I love Steve. Now I like you. And I like William because he's thrown his stuff in there.
I are tag teaming on this. Actually, Sam, do me a favor. Can you just give me that website again about tuning in?
Yeah, it's if you go on the Empire State Development Corporation, if you just Google that, or Google Empire Station Complex, you'll be able to get to a point where it says public hearings, and you'll see the sign up for tomorrow night's. And you can make written comments before February 20th. We intend to submit a phone book worth of objections, but there'll be a lot of high quality speakers.
We're running out of time. It's 9 o'clock. I want to thank you very, very much. And thank you, Pamela, because Pamela is always my co-host, my partner. And I want to thank our guy Anthony Grifo, he shies away from publicity, but he's a good guy. And I want to thank all the people, especially Bill Otteson, who have contributed comments. And in Arthur Avenue, where I come from, we have a saying, "Sempre noi," always with us. I want to thank everybody for tuning in.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone. Have a great night.